Willie. Jonathan Lyndon Chase. Yay! And Julie Langsam. Yay! These are our 3 artists today. So Abby will do her introduction, and then I'll do a short introduction, and then we'll start with viewing their works.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great transition. I don't want to start early, but we're just about there. So, I mean, one quick thing, since you just saw all 4 of our speakers, is I'd recommend you could go ahead and pin one or one of them if you'd like to not lose them in the crowd. We are expecting a pretty big group today, but I'll go over how to do that in just a second. All right, so welcome everyone. It's so nice to see, like I was just saying, so many familiar faces of people who've been coming to event after event, but then also to see some new faces. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Abby King, the Assistant Director of Adult Programming here at PAFA, and I facilitate 3 out of 4 of our live Zoom events here at PAFA. This is another great Art at Noon. This is a really special one. We're highlighting, it's kind of a 2-day event today where we celebrate artists from the Brasky Center. And we'll have some more information. Paola will talk about a little bit why we're doing that, a special sale that we're having. But I wanted to go ahead and thank all of our artists for being here with us today, as well as thank our members. So thank you so much to PAFA members. This program is free, but you're the reason that we can keep programs like this free. And so thank you for your ongoing support. And if you haven't already joined, please consider joining. I'll drop a link in the chat in just a second. So I'm gonna just quickly go over some Zoom etiquette. I know for many of us, this has become our lives. I think this is week 10, which is crazy to think about. But just a couple things. I'm gonna go ahead and mute everyone. My speakers, please feel free to unmute yourselves. I feel like by muting everyone, it's sort of saying we don't want to hear from you, which is not at all. We do want to hear from you. There will be a Q&A section at the end of the talk. But I am going to mute, or I did mute everyone just because Zoom likes to assume it knows who the speaker is. And although it's really cute when cats come in and start meowing and interrupt, it is a little bit distracting. And so I am going to ask that unless you're actively asking a question or one of our speakers, that you stay on mute, just so for people's screens, you're able to see everyone. With that said, there's 2 options that you can visually see the program today. So if I'm the big screen on the big head on the bottom of your screen, you're in speaker mode. That is what I recommend you keep the program in, at least for the first 40 minutes where we have our speakers presenting. Paola has a wonderful slideshow she's going to be showing with these artists' works. And so I'd recommend keeping it in speaker view so you can see folks. When we do open it up to more of a conversation, if you go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen where it will say gallery view, that's one way to see a lot of people on the call. So right now I can see quite a few of our 63 participants. So just note you can go in between those screens as an option if this is your first Zoom call. A few other things to mention. So at the bottom of your screen, if you are on a laptop or a computer, there's the mute button. Again, you can unmute and mute yourself, but we'd ask you just to do that if you're actively speaking. Right next to that is the little video icon. I mention that because if you can't see yourself on the screen, if you click on that again, we'll be able to see you. We are recording today's event. That's the #1 question I get asked after this because people have different schedules. We now are working with people from across the country. We've even had people from Australia who want to see this call and might not be up yet. So we do put all of these videos on PAFA's YouTube channel about 24 hours to 48 hours after the talk. So if you'd like to not be on the recording, feel free to silence your screen that way. I'll also mention that if you're not actively speaking, you're not necessarily going to be on the recording, but just in case, that's one option that you have. If you go over just a button or 2 from there, you'll see where it says participants. If you click on that on the right-hand side of your screen, it'll pop up an option that says raise hand. So this is when we get to the Q&A portion. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do that and we will call on you and unmute you from there. And then the other option is we'd love to hear from you throughout the conversation. If you have links, thoughts, ideas, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm gonna get that started now. So this is an awesome resource that you can utilize throughout the entire conversation. And I'm gonna just quickly drop in our membership link, as I highlighted that before. Other than that, I think we've covered it. So it's now my pleasure to hand you over to the director of the Brodsky Center, Paola Morsiani, And I want to just quickly thank her so much for being a part of this and for inviting our special guests today, Jonathan Lyndon Chase, Willie Cole, and Julie Langsam. Thank you all for being here. And so Paula, I'm going to unmute you. There we go.
Thank you, Abby, for hosting these talks of artists who have worked at the Brasky Center. And welcome everybody to this talk with artist Jonathan Lyndon Chase. And I'm going to ask you, Jonathan, to wave again so everybody sees you, with Judy Langsam and with Willie Cole. Yay! We look forward to learning more about their work today. The city as a theme and a resource runs as a thread through the works of Julie, Willie, and Jonathan. But each artist has really been inspired by this theme, but then really has taken it to different results. And this is what we will learn about today. In this talk, the city will be sort of approached from a broad sense, and will include ideas such as, or themes or issues such as the detritus that is generated by city dwellers, architecture and its visual orders, and how it deeply determines who we are even as citizens, and communities, the communities that a city nurtures, but also invisible as well as surreptitious ways controls. Another angle that has brought us today with these artists is the fact that all these artists have done editions, print editions at the Brasky Center, and these are the works that we will look at today. The Brasky Center was founded in 1986 at Rutgers University and moved to PAFA in 2018. We invite artists to come and create new work with our master printers and master paper makers. And in the process, they meet and interact with students. So we play a very important pedagogical role in the school at PAFA, but also collaborate with our colleagues in the museum at PAFA. And through the vision of our founder, Judy Brodsky, the Brasky Center has worked with artists whose gender, whose background, whose ideas have not been really represented in the mainstream world. We have worked throughout our 30 years of history with over 300 artists. And the selection of work that we made will be available, or is available right now through an online sale at a very special and unique one-time only discount. So if you, and this online sale will go through tomorrow at 7 p.m. So if you have any questions about this online sale, please share your email via the chat function of this Zoom call, and we will be in touch with you shortly. I now want to move on to our PowerPoint. We will show you a couple of slides to show you the facility of the Brasky Center. And then we will start in alphabetical order with Jonathan Lyndon Chase. I will give a brief biographical introduction, and then Jonathan will speak about his prints that he made at the Brasky Center. We'll move on with Willie, who has done his first print with us in 1991, a long time ago, and also will do a brief introduction before you speak. And then finally with Julie Langsam, who was in residency in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and will also give a brief biographical introduction. At the end of this, we will have the opportunity to ask questions to our artists today. I'm gonna switch to a shared screen and start our, play from the start, good. Everybody can see it? Yes, good. So in our facility, we have a paper making studio where we have master paper makers who work with artists As well, we are in the process of establishing our own printmaking studio, but right now we're using the wonderful printmaking studio of the print department at PAFA. And we have an archive and inventory of about 4,000 works. So I work in tandem with the students who train in conservation issues, in caring for artworks issues, but also interpret the work with me and helping in this very important function. We also lend work to institutions throughout the country. And then we have a wonderful showroom when for anybody who wants to see our works in the flesh. And also it's a place where our sales manager, Lee Worrell, who is on this call as well, really works with clients. And now we'll move on to Jonathan Lyndon Chase. I wanted just to say briefly, Jonathan Lyndon Chase lives and works in Philadelphia. He obtained a BFA from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia in 2013 and an MFA from the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in 2016. His work can be found in the collections of the High Museum of Art Atlanta, at PAFA, of course, the Rubel Museum Contemporary Arts Foundation in Miami, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Walker Center in Minneapolis, and the Whitney Museum of American Art, among many other museums and private collections. His work will soon be on view at the Fabric Workshop here in Philadelphia. Please, Jonathan, take it from here. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Paula. I want to first say thank you for everybody who came out today to chat with us about art. And thank you, Abby, Brasky Center, and Paola for putting this together. I'm going to first start off by kind of just talking about my print for Head Kiss, which was the first print I did in 2018 with Peter Harsmaster print maker. This one kind of centers around a lot of the themes that are in my work, talking about race, gender, body politics, circulating around lived experience of my own and shared experience with Black and queer bodies in various spaces. The spaces for me relate and affect the body as this sort of, if you think of paper and memory and crumbling and kind of all these things that hold memory onto the body. And I work a lot with emotions and thinking about ideas of like toxic masculinity and the ways in which we perform our gender in different spaces. These spaces are private, public, compound spaces. And then there's different landscapes of the body, emotional, physical, and mental. So in Forehead Kiss, there's the theme of weather that takes into my work, where I think of weather as like the emotions where we can only kind of like prepare for them. Like if it rains, umbrella, galoshes for like puddles, snow, all of that stuff. So like clouds and weather phenomena, thinking about emotions and how our relationship is to them, we can't control them, so we can just best prepare. And clouds, I thought, were a very beautiful way to talk about some of these ideas with the space, being a non-gendered space, and the bodies kind of being in and out of the clouds, embracing in an intimate kind of setting, kissing on the forehead. My work kind of starts from like either collages, a memory, a thought, a poem. I have an archival system that I use as reference to organize all of my ideas and things of that nature. The print comes with like a audio CD. Me and my husband also do sound art, which is really amazing to collaborate with him on it.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you want to play, Paula.
Just for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not the best sound system. I promise you that when you hear it with the right set of headsets, it's actually very spacious and three-dimensional.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Paula. When I'm thinking of sound, like the other senses of the body, taste, sight, all of these things, I kind of tune into them on different, no pun intended, like volumes. And this one, for me, the sound was a really great experience for me to kind of expand and think about my practice in different ways. Now we have For You, For Us Come Back Soon, which is the recent print that I did. And this one was really fun. Collage is another aspect of my work. I love like Wageshi Mutu, Jacob Lawrence, Horace Pippin, Ramir Bearden. And those are some of the artists who kind of stay with me in my space and influence me. I'm gonna read the poem for this work, and then I'll get into kind of talking about it a little bit more. Cool, deep breath, cool air. It's after 6 p.m. His warmth makes me feel like sunrise. It's dangerous. For you, for us, come back soon. The poem is to the piece. I kind of talk to my work sometime, and then there's an exchange of what I intended and what kind of comes out of the birth making, which is also something really alchemical and really exciting about the process of printmaking. For this piece, I'm from North Philly, born and raised. My studio is in Kensington, and the cityscape that you see here has like kind of cooler but kind of like hotter kind of like palette things kind of happening. And for this one, I was able to think about how we're always spending time in boxes, and these figures and people are inside of these kind of protected safe places. The poem For You, For Us Come Back Soon talks a lot about, for me, the public space and the potential violence that has been and is still for many, many years in time afflicted on Black and trans bodies. There's sort of like hotter red color kind of talks about like the space being a site for violence. And then the buildings are kind of like the safe places and like the neighborhoods that I photograph and kind of work from. Being from the city, it's always like sort of loud and quiet and like all of these juxtapositions of different materials, concrete and things like that that I draw color from as well. The fences are sort of like these like compositional things that talk about the body is kind of having to go through or passage or navigate their space, the multiple spaces, the domestic space, the public space, the interiority of the body. And I really wanted to talk about tenderness and kind of like more quiet, enclosed moments that we maybe don't like see as much or talk about as much in different ways. So these kind of glowy windows, the body kind of illuminates into them, and they're really kind of a part of their space. The bottom right hand, someone going to a corner store getting food. The opposite to the left, someone sitting with jewelry. I wanted there to be sort of like a rhythmic and a sound to it that kind of vibrate, both quiet and loud at the same time. I'm really into like opposites kind of happening simultaneously at the same time. Working with Peter is like really, really amazing. And he introduced me to so many just like processes that working from this experience, I'm extending into like my greater painting and multidisciplinary practice.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan. Anybody who has a question, please jot it down, and you'll be able to ask it in 20 minutes after Willie and Julie present their work. I'm going now to introduce Willie Cole. Willie Cole lives and works in Mine Hills, New Jersey. He obtained his BFA from the School of Visual Arts in New York in 1976 and studied at the Art Students League of New York through 1979. His work has been the subject of several numerous one-person museum exhibitions nationally and internationally, including the Museum of Modern Art in 1998, and a survey exhibition of his works on paper in 2010 at the James Gallery of the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, which traveled extensively. His work has also been included in numerous group exhibitions, including Reconfiguring an African Icon, Odes to the Mask by Modern and Contemporary Artists from 3 continents at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 2011. Currently, his work, including at least one of the prints that we will see today, is on view at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, in an exhibition entitled Personal Space, Self-Portraits on Paper. Willie, take it from here. Thank you. You're on, Willie.
All right, I'm on. Great. Well, I'm glad to be here. I want to say hello to Judy Brodsky. She might be listening. And also to Lynn Allen and Randy Henninghouse. Those were my Brasky folks back in the day. And also Elaine Fody. So this first image here from 1991 was, it kind of reflects that whole city theme, because at that time I lived in the city, down the street from an abandoned building, and that building was my main art supply store. So I go into that building and scored like a ton of blue hair dryers and was making sculpture out of them. But I don't like to make armatures. I'd rather have the object make its own armature or be the armature. So I couldn't get the hairdryer pieces to stand up. So I decided to do a collage. And the collage led to this opportunity at Brasky Center, working with Elaine Fody to make this piece here. The image itself was inspired by a trip to Mexico, maybe the summer before or the month before. And I was very obsessed in 1991 with Joseph Campbell. So everything was comparing mythology and religion and finding contemporary icons to stand in for ancient icons and things like that. So this piece here, thank you for moving forward. I'm gonna let you be the driver. I'm just the passenger. This piece here, Man Spirit Mask, it was I think in 1989, 88 rather, I was a resident at Student Museum in Harlem. And in my studio in New Jersey, I had been making clothing out of woven galvanized steel. So when I got the residency in Harlem, I couldn't take all that steel to the studio there. So I was looking for something else to do, and I found an iron on the street. And it led me to 10 years of making art out of irons. During that journey, I decided at some point to put myself in the work. I always use the iron to be, the scorch to be the spirit, and the iron to stand in as an icon, almost like a statue that represents a god. And I thought of the scorch, the steamhole patterns as scarification. So in this piece, I explored all that for myself as the man with scarification, the scorch as the spirit, and the inverted iron as the mask. And Randy Hemminghouse was the master printer on this piece here. This piece, every once in a while, I ask myself, why am I playing make-believe? Why don't I jump into the real world a bit more, beyond my imagination? So when George Bush II was president, it was easy to be in reality because there was so much crazy things going on, just like now almost, only now it's a bit crazier. But I'm also a writer, so I really like to riff on words. So because his name was Bush, and I forget what he was doing on this particular day I did this, but he was burning something. So this became Burning Bush because of George Bush. Brasky Center gave me the opportunity to do large-scale digital prints at a place called Quality House of Graphics. When that opportunity came, I was like obsessed with Polaroids. So I'd taken a lot of Polaroids, overhead views of my steam iron collection. At that time I had millions of, well, maybe not millions, I would say hundreds of steam irons. Most of the ones that were generic, just a black handle and a silver body, I took them apart to make sculpture. But the ones that were unique, I photographed them, looking down on them and saw them as masks. So these are two of those. I know the one on the right is called Quick as a Wink, yes. And the other one is called Always on Target. I really tried to emphasize the facial qualities of their design. As I said, I was inspired by comparative religion and mythology, and had studied African art in college and beyond up to this day. So I looked for these kind of images. So as I said, I decided to put myself into the work. So in 2004, I photographed myself in my studio and took that photograph to Brasky Center to collage myself with these steam iron patterns. I actually made maybe 5 or 6 different ones because every iron to me was a tribe at that time. But of course, the center decided to just print 2 of them, which is no problem. I still have the other ones in my computer today.
Okay.
So it says this, the Silex and the Sunbeam. Actually mastered Photoshop skills during this process because Brodsky assigned a brilliant young student to work with me. And, you know, I thought about people like Matthew Barney and Cindy Sherman having themselves in their work. So I decided to put myself in the work in a big way. I grew up with 5 generations. I knew my great-great-grandmother. I knew my great-grandmother, of course, my grandmother and my mother. And my great-grandmother had a collection of doilies. She passed away, I think, in maybe 1993, and I still have all of her doilies. So when I got this opportunity to work at the Brasky Center, I wanted to make one of those doilies, but I wanted it to reflect the work I'd done prior to this. So I chose to build it around the image of the steam iron. And I also wanted a very large piece. So you'll see here, it's you can have a section, you can have a half, you can have a quarter, you can put them all together. But it's a paper piece that I really, really enjoyed making. And just to drop a hint, I would love to make another paper piece soon.
Yay. Absolutely.
Okay.
Can you speak about this image?
Can I speak about this image? This image,
Which is
yeah.
at the center.
Yes, there is. I have a collection of ironing boards, and some of them have labels on them. So I had one that was like, I don't know, in my mind it was from the 50s, but it may have been newer, but it had an image of a woman ironing on it. So I tried to incorporate that in here, and I can't really see it so well from the image here, maybe because I'm outside in the sunlight, but it's a woman ironing in the center. And that was a logo that was on an ironing board. And then it just spills out to the iron itself, making the petals or petal-like shapes to create kind of a mandala look. Now, you should realize I can speak forever about any image, so you really do have to move me on if you like.
Okay, well, that was your last piece that you made with us. That was over 10 years ago, yes. We need to ask you back and do more work with us. And we will now speak with, thank you, Willie. We will now speak with Julie. Let me see, I don't see you, but I hope you're there.
I'm here.
Julie. Okay, so a brief introduction to say that Judy Langsam lives and works in Milltown, New Jersey, but also in New Brunswick, where she's a professor in drawing and directs the undergraduate department at Rutgers University, undergraduate department at Maison Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers University. She earned a BFA from Purchase College, SUNY, and her MFA from Queens College of CUNY. Her work has been exhibited at the Richard and Dolly Mass Gallery at Purchase College, Espai 8 in Barcelona, Reykjavik Art Gallery in Iceland, and Transition Gallery in London, and is in numerous museums and private collections. You can take it from here. Julie?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. And thank you for all the people that are supporting PAFA and the Brodsky Center. Thank you to the Brodsky Center and Paola, Abby and Lee I've just met. You saw in the photograph before that the person standing next to me was Randy Hemminghouse, and he is the most unbelievably amazing master printer I could ever imagine. So getting the opportunity to do this residency was amazing. And I walked in and I said to Randy, we're going to put every single way there is to make a print into these editions. And so he took up the challenge, and it was a lot of work for him especially, but it was an amazing experience. I grew up in Queens, New York. I'm a city girl. I'm third generation New York City, born and bred, and public school education the whole way. And, you know, so I did the, you know, I came of age as an artist in the late 70s, early 80s. And so I was in New York at that time, and it was a very different place than it is right now. It was raw, it was gritty, it was fun, it was not a mall, you know, all the things that, you know, artists like about places. And I was, you know, working and teaching and doing a lot of things. And at some point, I think I was 35 when I said, I have to go and find a job that will give me some health insurance. And so I applied for all these teaching jobs, and I ended up teaching at the Cleveland Institute of Art for 13 years. And so when I moved to Cleveland, like the work that I was doing was very different. And when I moved to Cleveland, I started to think about the city and the way that the city had shaped me. And the fact that I had moved to the Midwest, I had envisioned the Midwest as this very like open plain where you can't see anything, like Iowa, and Ohio is nothing like Iowa, but I'm from Queens. I didn't really know that. So I kind of started to work with this idea of what I thought the landscape was coming from a city. And I know this is not really applicable to so many of these images at the moment, but what starts to happen is I start to think about the landscape and my relationship to the landscape in terms of how I relate to structures and buildings and the built environment. And I have to say that, you know, I started out as an artist, as a photographer, and what I took pictures of was pictures of buildings. I just took pictures of buildings. I did architectural drafting in high school. There was a point where I thought I might be an architect. But I really wasn't interested in the building itself. I was kind of interested in what the building stood for. And that sort of started getting me involved in, for many years, that I'm still interested in this idea of how the modernism, how the modernist movement kind of influenced not just architecture, but everything. I mean, from the way that we, you know, look at items in a store, or you know, the way things are crafted, or even the way, you know, a medicine bottle is designed or something like that. So I'm really interested in sort of how all of those things come together. This print is sort of like a collage. It is literally a collage. There are things glued onto the page. But they sort of are quotations and comments, and sort of like a way of signifying different things that I want to talk about. There's an image in here. Can you see my little pointer? I don't know if you can.
No, this
No.
one?
No, okay. Well, you know, there's images.
I'll point.
Okay, there's an image of one of the Bauhaus master buildings in Dessau, Germany, which I visited in there. There's a picture of a Richard Serra sculpture in the upper left corner that I took. And so I'm kind of like bringing all of these signifiers together to have a conversation about how these things interact. So for this one, and again, I want to also say that this way of putting images together in like en masse on one page is really new for me. And it's because of these prints that I've sort of entered back into a new space with my work, which hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you about. But, you know, so these are photographs that I've taken. The sources are important to me. For instance, the top is a landscape this one with the painting is a photograph taken from the Glass House, Philip Johnson's famous architecture in New Canaan. There's an altered photograph of the Ronchamp Chapel. I'm trying to just put these things together and think about the ways that both the formal, the shape, the form, the color, how those things also carry meaning in terms of what they signify in terms of the actual image in there. And that those things start to talk about things like progress and idealism. And here are some words. Thank you for putting this up. So this is the middle print. It's a suite of 5 prints, and this one is in the middle. So I just wanted to highlight all of these words that I was thinking about in terms of this body of work. So the photograph, I do a lot of cutting. I even cut into the prints. We'll show you a print. The next print has hand cutting. There's relief print. I'm interested in architecture, surface. All of these words really have, meaning for me. Paola, you want to go to the next one? So in this print, this big bottom part, this abstraction, is the floor plan of Le Corbusier's Ronchamp Chapel. And I've been working with this idea of architectural floor plans for quite some time. And for me, it's a way of thinking about abstraction in a different way, but also thinking of abstraction as something solid, as something whole, like this. It's both a theory and an idea, and it also becomes something concrete. And what I'm doing in here is, there's a lot of printmaking processes, but I'm cutting out areas, and you can see where the dark black areas are. There's velvet behind there. So each one of those cutouts is hand cut out. The velvet is behind it. I'm also hand painting onto each print differently. So I'm just trying to make these connections that are both formal and theoretical and also somehow expressive in some way. I can't explain what it means for me. Well, I should say, this photograph actually has led me into a whole new body of work. I took this photograph in Iceland, and I was just stunned by the light. And as with most of my work, like, I'll have an idea and it will just sit and like marinate for, it could be a couple of years, before I know what I'm doing with it. And so this opportunity to make these prints with Paola allowed me to feel courageous enough to become a photographer again. And what I did was I decided, I was very upset with, let me just close this window because somebody's mowing. Very upset with the election and everything that was going on. And I felt like I didn't know my own country. So when Trump was elected, I took a trip across the country and drove 15,000 miles and photographed the landscape and structures in the landscape. So I went everywhere from Detroit, cities, Minneapolis, to places in the middle of nowhere, to the desert. And I took over 15,000 photographs, which I wanted to make into a film about how the landscape, how our landscape in America really reflects what is happening in America, that it's just a picture. It's just right there. It's like everything that we need to see about society is sort of literally there in the landscape. And Paola had asked about new projects, but I'm planning to I was gonna make a film. I was gonna make a short film this summer. And then I was gonna go on the road next summer and actually shoot this with a cinematographer as a movie. But I don't know, with COVID, everything is up in the air. But but thank you, Paola, for introducing this topic, because I don't think I've ever really thought about my work specifically as how it relates to the idea of what the city is and what the city represents, especially an American city.
Thank you so much, Julie. I will now stop sharing the PowerPoint and open the floor to anyone who has a question for Jonathan, Willie, or Julie. You can most effectively raise your hand. Abby, how do we raise our hand?
Yeah, of course. So we'd ask you either drop your question in the chat and one of us can read it, or if you raise your hand, you click on the participant button at the bottom of your screen. On the right-hand side, it'll pop up and say raise hand. Or feel free, if you have trouble, just to like wave at us and put something in the chat and we'll try to find you.
Jennifer.
We already, perfect. All right, Jennifer, I'm gonna unmute you. Oh, you're unmuted, go for it.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. I want to say first thank you to all the artists for taking the time to do this talk. This was really interesting, and it's so incredible also to see work from Philadelphia artists. My question is for Willie, and I wanted to ask if the domesticity of the iron has any particular meaning to him in his work, or if they're mostly appealing to him as a found object.
Well, am I unmuted? Yes.
Yep.
You know, the real catalyst for it was my great-grandmother. She died at like 97 years old, and she had been a domestic my entire life. You know, she ironed, she washed, and she was an old lady my whole life, I feel too. So that was the catalyst for it. But also, I listened to a lot of Malcolm X speeches, like in the 60s and 70s. And he had a story called The House Negro and the Field Negro. So when I applied those two types to my family, I saw my great-grandmother as a house Negro. And it's a whole long mythology that I created, but I tried to see all the people who worked in the big house during the slavery era of this country as house Negroes. And I thought about what their icons would be. And I tried to contrast those icons with the icons they would use in their traditional setting, where they would have a statue that represents twins or a statue that represents thunder. But here in the US under slavery, that iron became the icon. So everything that the iron represented and the double entendre of the iron being an element related to the Yoruba deity Ogun, all of that came into play in my scorch pieces and iron pieces. Make sense?
Really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right.
Thanks, Jennifer. And we have a question connected to that, Willie, for you. We have two questions actually for you. One directly addressing that is someone asked, at what point did you make the connection between irons and slave ships? And then we have a follow-up question by one of our curators asking about your grandmother's collection of doilies and that work as well.
Yeah. I had a great friend in the 80s and 90s who was a dealer of African art. And, you know, I thought I was a big deal as an artist in New Jersey, but I wasn't really getting opportunities anywhere else. And I was a painter at the time. When I first attempted to be in this so-called art world, I was not a neo-expressionist. I wasn't a graffiti artist. I actually thought I was an impressionist painter, but my paintings weren't getting any attention. So I switched to sculpture. And in that process, I started doing found objects. Now, my mind is racing so much, I forgot the actual question now. I'm just talking about this journey. So is there a point that I should be focused on? Can you give it to me one more time?
Yeah, they wanted to know if there was a connection, or at what point did you make the connection between irons and slave ships?
Right, okay. So my friend, the art dealer, I would visit his studio. He and I were the only people that would be up all night long. So I would go to his loft and I would handle all the art like a really personal way. I could actually put on a mask or blow an ivory horn. So that, you know, that put that vibration in my reality in a very close and loud way. So because I have that vibration around me, I'm now walking down the street and I find an iron that had been run over by a car because my studio was right near a highway. And I saw the iron as an African mask that day. And that's where it started.
Thank you. Could you, and then And feel free, everyone, to raise your hand or put more questions in the chat. But we had one more for Willie from Dr. Brittany Webb, who's one of our curators, asking about your grandmother's collection of doilies, and if you've made a lot of work with those, or if the Brodsky Center was kind of the only piece. And maybe if you could give a little bit of background about what drew you to those.
Well, in this family of mine, up until my son was born, and I speak of my family as my mother's family, as opposed to my father's family, there'd only been 2 males born, myself and my cousin Jimmy, who lives in California. So as a result, I grew up playing with the girls, and when we visit grandma for the summer, for the weekend, she would teach us how to knit and crochet and make pot holders and all that stuff. So that's how doilies came into my life. They were always around, and I don't remember any of those techniques now, but as a little kid, I did crochet and knit. So when my great-grandmother passed away, I got a box of some of her stuff, and I have some jewelry, and I have some doilies. All right.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I was curious, while we wait for some other questions too, for me, at least, my relationship to the city has changed so much during COVID. I live in South Philly, and so like being in the city, it feels like a different relationship sometimes than my friends who live in more open spaces. But in general, I just wanted to ask the 3 of you if your relationship to your studio practices changed during COVID, or if there were other, even to your working practices, or kind of to the themes and the ideas you're pursuing right now, if that's been any impact.
Okay.
If I can share, chat a little bit about that. For me, thinking about the print in the city, like the city's like my home and a part of me and my history, and the figures being inside, kind of almost isolated from each other. As I've been working, I work from home normally. My first studio, a couple of them have been in home, so I'm very much a domestic, and thinking about just the state of things right now, just sickness and death and death and death, and not seeing colleagues, friends, family, has really, in my studio practice, has been giving me lots of desire and notions of just togetherness and community. As I'm working on my show titled Big Wash for Fabric Workshop, those themes are coming together more strongly as I'm figuring them out. And also this sort of lots of themes of science fiction and dystopia I've been heavily thinking about as well.
I could share that I feel in some ways that the COVID thing, that the world has caught up to me with COVID, because I've got all my personal OCD issues and everything, and the whole I don't know, it's just sort of a funny, it's just a sort of a weird, I'm sorry, I lost my thought. The idea that, I'm sorry, I forgot my thought.
That's totally
Come back to me. Come back to me.
Willie, did you have anything to say? Mm-hmm.
Yes, the question was, how has the COVID-19 impacted or affected my life, my work as an artist, etc.? Well, I've been telling people since this occurred that quarantine is my natural state. I spend most of my time alone. I live outside the city in a very quiet, isolated area. So it's been great. It's been normal for me, except for once a month when I go out to the grocery store and everybody's wearing masks and things like that. Then I realized that it's funny, even 9/11 to me was like a TV event, because I'm looking at my front window at the deer running across the lawn and a beautiful sky. And I turn on the news and I see this drama. So this has kind of been the same way for me personally. but the effects of family on family and friends, like I've lost 4 family members during this time. So it's also made me think about if things never change, how will I continue my life as an artist? In the beginning, it was a really nagging question, but then I realized that all my showrooms are closed down, but all my customers are still shopping. You know, so that kind of took the worry away about that a bit. It's also made me think about being more present in the digital realm. My daughter has me really active on Facebook and Instagram, and she's given me a website. But I asked myself, if that's the only way, if that was the only way that I could communicate as an artist, you know, what would I be doing? How would I reach people? I also thought about the problems of the schools being closed. When this whole thing went down, I had 4 commissions, 2 in Europe and 2 here in New Jersey. The New Jersey ones were in communities. But everything closed down because nobody wants to get into groups, of course. So I had been thinking about ways to design those projects where they could happen virtually.
I do remember what I was going to say. I'm sorry. It was something that Jonathan had said. He talked about dystopias, and what I wanted to say was that for at least the last 20 years, my work has really been about the idea of the utopian ideal that modernism sort of, you know, envelops and promotes. And my work sort of, if you check out my paintings on my website, julielangsam.com, you'll see that a lot of my work places these architectural containers in these big, vast landscapes. There's no people, there's no sign of life. They're very apocalyptic. And I think of that science fiction, dystopic kind of like landscape, when I was making the paintings of the architecture in the middle of nowhere, which was like a 20-year project, it really is about the fact that what are our monuments? There are these architectural monuments that are containers, and in my paintings, there's no sign of life whatsoever. And in some really weird way, I feel like those images are sort of prescient in terms of like how I feel now. We're all isolated. We're all cut off from each other. It's like sometimes when I go and look at those paintings, I see that there is this sort of, I don't know, understanding that this is going to happen at some point, or a question really about like, well, where do we go from here? Where do we go when this is over? I mean, this is like the most complex, unbelievably like affecting to every single human being on the planet. Like there's just so much potential for change. I just hope that we do something with this opportunity. I mean, I look at my paintings and I see, well, that's the way the world could be. You know, we could just be leaving these empty monuments behind, and you know, I guess that's the purpose of culture. But you know, I don't know. Those are the things I think about in the studio. They're the things I think about at night. So
wonderful. There is a question for Jonathan, but before that, I want to read a comment by Peggy Hartzell. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. She says, the iron industry furnaces Hopewell and Warwick here in northern Chester County had many free African iron workers. Very little acknowledgement of the African American contribution of this knowledge of iron making to the nation's beginnings. Great. Very interesting. But for Jonathan, there is a question from Abby Lakey. I love seeing how you use sound and poetry alongside your imagery. Can you talk more about how you use these other forms of communication and sense within your other work and sound?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So, because I think about collage a lot, and thinking about like Judith Butler, Du Bois, like all of like these theorists who talk about performance in public space, and then how we perform in our private spaces. So when I think about the body and sensitivity and emotions, I work, every artist does in some capacity, but I really work in isolation and working with lots of cathartic energy. So I'm paying special attention to like our senses and thinking about being a queer in a Black body and an intersection of those kind of identities, and thinking about sound of our voice and the way that our language is like so coded and like really complex. The sound work I do with my husband, who we both love music, so he's been really influencing. I love to practice with my work. I do lots of installations. So for example, a painting could be double-faced and have assemblage elements as well as collage elements too. So I'm always thinking about all of these things happening sort of at once at the same time.
Wonderful, thank you. Carol Cole wanted to ask, to be more specific with, ask Willie, to be more specific and say, at what point did you make the connection between the irons and the slave ships?
Yeah, I will answer that. I just want to comment on something that Jonathan just said.
Yes.
And I think that as artists, our real talent or so-called gift is the ability to access creative energy. If you can access creative energy, you can apply it to anything and be good or at least be effective at it. So you're writing and doing sound and all that, it makes perfect sense to me. You're just taking that energy, placing another square in the board. And that's the beauty of being an artist to me. Regarding the slave ship imagery, when I was a kid, I should be more specific, back in the 60s, my family subscribed to Ebony magazine. And every year, Ebony magazine would do a big book called Ebony's Guide to Negro History. So when I was moving out of my studio at the time, I think around sometime in the 90s, I found that book. And in that book, there was a picture of the slave ship. And just immediately it saw it as an ironing board. I really, kind of tying back to what it's about Jonathan, I really think it's about just being open and being curious. But openness is more important than curiosity because things are coming into you when you're open. Curiosity is more about a search. Openness is about being more receptive to energy and ideas. And those things are fueled for me as an artist through visual impulse or stimuli. So everything becomes inspiring because that's what my day is about. It's like you walk out and say, okay, where is it? Where's the inspiration? Where's the inspiration? And just living that line and it's always there.
Wonderful. That open-endedness is also a character that cities have, really this overlapping of stimulations and sounds and visuals. And you all are working, all of the three works that you all make really are also connected by this idea of open-endedness. Do we have time for another question?
I think we should probably wrap up. Sorry, Paola. I just want to make sure that we...
Yeah, I wanted to say also that a PowerPoint and this digital format does not even begin to describe the tactility of these prints that were made over a very extensive period of time, each one of them, because there are layers and layers of techniques, colors, and also materials. For example, the doily work, the work inspired by the doilies has threads embedded in the paper. Mm-hmm. And Jonathan's work has 7 colors one on top of each other, and the print has an incredible 3-dimensionality to it. And then Julie spoke about really tour de force that these suite of 5 prints are in terms of, she used all the methods available under the sun in printmaking. So kudos to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to really meet you all. Thank you, Abby, again. I leave you to your last comment.
Yeah, so thank you, Paola, so much. I wanted to just reiterate, this is part of a 2-day event that we're doing highlighting the Brasky Center. They have a wonderful sale. Lee Werrell, I know, is on the call now, who's handling that, but I'm going to drop that link one more time in the chat. We'd love to see you all again, so please check out future PAFA from Home events. We have a great talk with Brooke Davis-Anderson, who's on this call, about Wharton Esherick with one of our professors, John Grieg, this Friday. And then we have a lot of really exciting events next week that are already up on the website. So it's so nice to see so many of you. And thank you again to Paola and our wonderful artists for taking the time and being here today.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. This was great.